Right, this just arrived in the post today. It's a Smith's 8-day wall clock, and it's the first wall clock I've ever owned, so quite excited to buy this one. Nice size thing, pretty large diameter clock with what looks like a mahogany ring, and I've tried turning it with the key supplied, but it's fully wound and I can't hear no ticking. So it obviously needs taking apart and looking at. Look forward to doing this one. It's got a lovely brass bezel which unlocks by unlatching that from behind, and then opens up like that. The brass will look nice once it's all been polished up and everything. So I like the restoration side of clocks. It's quite satisfying when you've got something that looks old and run down as this does, and bringing it up to making it look like new. Now the whole thing, I was going to say weighs, it's around 40, just under 40 centimetres. That's just under 16 inches across. So quite a good size. Inside the, put my glasses on, the face has gone quite dull looking. I don't know if there's a way, it's got like these sort of spots where it's oxidised and catching it in the light, and I can't really show you that by camera, where you see these little black dots. If you catch them in the light you can actually see the metal face, the actual sheet steel that this face has been printed onto. So I don't think there's much I can do with bringing this up. I'll make some inquiries. I'm going to need to take this apart to find out why it's not working. And first thing I can see, there's a series of screws which hold the dial in, and out of the 6 screws there's only 2 holding it on, which will probably tell me that someone's already had a go at this already. That's just spinning. Just remove the centre pin which holds the hands on. It's a little retaining washer. Minute hand. Oops, hour hand. Right. There you go. There's the back of it. Now we have the clock mechanism itself, which is held on by, again, 4 screws, 2 of which are already out. 3 out, 4 out. And here's the mechanism. So, oh, there goes my phone. Looking at this, there's not much to it at all. This has got to be the simplest clock I've ever worked on. There's nothing to it. Being that there's no bell or chime or strike of any kind, the wheels are limited. What we got? 1, 2, 3, 4 cogs and a mainspring barrel. That's it. What this has got which my other clocks don't have, is a hairspring. I'll zoom in on that. You can see it's it goes to work and then just stops. So this is probably in need of a really good service. Clean off all the oils, they're probably all congealed up, and re-oil it and put it back together and have it working in no time, I reckon. First of all, I'm going to remove this front plate. There we go. And that's what we're left with. It does look quite dirty, and I wouldn't be surprised if this has never been serviced. Oh, my first job will be to let down the pressure from the mainspring. First of all, I'm going to undo the spring which holds the little click in place, locking the mainspring. Get my winder on there, give it a little turn, release the spring and let it slowly unwind. That's it. Next, I'll remove this little pin. Which holds this gear in place. I was going the wrong way. There we go. That means that can come off. I always say take loads of pictures, because they're going to be your only reference. Oh, that's a bit gluey. See the pin going through the mainspring here. They put it through and bent it at the other end, so it's not coming out as it normally should do. So I've got to try to straighten that out somehow for it to come out. But I got it in the end.
Is this what you're waiting for?
Yeah, you could have just left them inside.
Oh, I don't know if I thought you might want them.
Just leave it.
Should I leave them on the thing?
Yeah. this plate. Another quick photo. Okay, and then on the back end I've released the escapement. Now I suspect this is where the real trouble is. So this is going to be needing to be cleaned thoroughly and oiled. This is filthy, really, that's what it is. Okay. So the problem I've got at the moment is that my spring holders for my homemade homemade spring winder are a little bit too small. When I say a little bit too small, a lot too small. So I want something to fit just inside the barrel there, and I'm rummaging around and trying to find something which I can butcher up to fit in there to hold the spring captive. Let's see what I can find. So the inside of this barrel measures just a shade over 40mm. So I've got to find a tube of some description which is around or no more than 40mm to fit in there, and then create one of these. I've got an idea, something that might fit. I've already had a measure up, and that garden umbrella that's actually perfect. It's got just enough play in there for me to go in and out the barrel. So I reckon if I took a couple of inches off of that, no one's going to moan. So that's what I'm going to do. Let's get the mole grips out on it. It's sealed at the bottom. Don't know if that's to give it more strength or something, I don't know. I could be ruining this. I'm going to have one more look before I really decide to take this apart. I couldn't find anything, so this is going to have to go. Alright, I only need about 40mm off of this, so I'm going to cut it here to get to the clean part, because this bottom bit is rusted. Actually, that bottom cap is only plastic, it's not even welded. Alright, so now I've got a clean bit. Yeah, about that much should do. Pretty rusty inside. Never mind, I'll give that a good clean up and I'm sure that'll be fine. Need to go just over the depth of the spring, so it'll be about that much. That's roughly what I've got to cut off. That should do it. So just to show you, that's pretty good for what I want. That will be big enough to capture the spring. So half an hour at my time and I've now got a new addition to my, there you go, I've got a set of 3 there now from my winding machine. Right, stick that in there. there we go. I would say that's pretty tired, to be honest with you. That should be a lot bigger than that. Could get away with it if I wanted to, but would be nice to change it, I think. I'll look into that. Meanwhile, I'll clean up all the components. It's dead dry in there. I'll clean up all the components and decide whether I'm going to order a spring, or am I probably just too excited to get the clock working again and stick that one back in there, and I could always change it at a later date. But alright, for now let's service the clock parts. Alright, so I've just taken the balance off of this little mechanism off for cleaning, and just want to undo the escape wheel and the pallet. They're quite delicate little things, these. Right, that's all I need to clean for now. Actually, I'll need to undo that so that I can clean the jewels as well. These things, I'm not going to run these through the ultrasonic. I think instead I'll just put them in a little bath of cleaning fluid and clean them with a brush by hand, as they're far too delicate, and particularly with these pallets where you've got little jewels in there, the ultrasonic can loosen the jewels and you end up losing them, and it's happened to me before, so I'll not bother doing it that way. Instead, as I say, I'll just gently clean them with a little brush and a little bit of fluid in a little pot. Right, I've taken all the parts and put them into a little solution of clock cleaning fluid, and I'll let them soak for a little while, and every so often agitate them to see if I can gradually get them to clean up. I'll just leave that aside. I'm waiting for my ultrasonic machine to warm up and get to temperature so that I can bung the rest of the bits in there. And meanwhile, this spring, look at it, it's knackered. It started tearing down there. What should be just an oval hole is now becoming not even a hole anymore, more a notch. There's only a few millimeters before it breaks off completely. Now I probably, what I'll do is I'm going to cut this along there and notch out another hole, just so that I can use this spring temporarily, just to see how the clock runs to begin with, and once it's up and running and I've got it on test for a while and I'm happy with it, I will probably then change the spring, which is not going to be a big job for me to do, being that these clocks are so basic. While I've got all the parts being clean and soaking away, I thought I'd make an attempt on this case. So I'll remove the front glass to begin with. Then I can polish up the bezel, and then I'm going to, I think I'm going to rub down the woodwork on this because it's a bit scuffed in areas. There you go. I can polish all that up with a bit of brush polish. I'll rub down the woodwork on this and restain it, oil it, or whatever I decide to do with it. So I think one of the first jobs I want to do is to see how well this bezel polishes up. I'm just using a little bit of Auto Sol, which is my favourite brass cleaning cream, and it does come out really nice. There's a lot of stuff coming off of that. It's just a shame that there's not much I can do with the actual dial of the clock to bring it up. So that's just going to have to stay as it is. And you know what, a lot of people seem to think that things like that, you know, marks and scuffs and general aging are a tell the story of the clock. I'm actually the opposite. I think restoration, I'm not into the sympathetic restorations people seem to like. I like restoring things and trying to make them look like they were when they came out of the factory. And this bezel is going to be one of them things, and I'll give you a little close-up of this in a moment once I've done a small area. There you go, you can see what the finished effect is going to look like in comparison to that. It's going to look quite stunning. So while the other bits have been soaking up in the ultrasonic cleaner, I've cleaned these up by hand using a little bit of clock cleaning fluid, and then I rinsed them off with lighter fluid just to wash off all the residue. And now I've just put this all, the whole escapement back together. Piece pops in there. Actually, I want to mention that I have cleaned the pinions using a piece of pegwood, cleaned out all the pinions and cleaned out all the pivot holes as well. The holes for these pivots are so tiny, you don't know if you've got it located or not. That's it. I really should be using a loop. Yep, they're in. Put this little bridge on top. I'm applying gentle pressure between my index finger and my thumb, very gentle pressure, just enough to hold the bridge in place while I jiggle about the pallet fork and the escape until I feel that it's connected, or located rather. You might be able to see that on camera that the whole bridge there is completely flush with the base. Screw that in. No, not that screw. Just checking for free movement before I tighten anything up fully. Last thing I want to do is break a pivot, and I've done that before. So next thing is the balance. Now, get that in its location. That on top. Is that in? Yep, that's in. This is probably the hardest part of the whole clock. This is the most delicate area. Getting back to the mainspring, I've cut it shorter and put a new hole on there. The piece I snapped off I placed over the top of this part here and used it as a template to cut in the new hole. I drilled a couple of holes and used the file to enlarge them. Cleaned the spring up completely. Friend of mine, Abs from Arizona, he recently did a video about how to clean mainsprings. It's very good. Showed me a way that I hadn't thought of before. It makes cleaning of the spring really easy, and I'll leave a link for you for that. He's really worth watching and very knowledgeable too. So the next stage is to get this spring back in its barrel. So when I'm doing this, I'm making myself aware where the catch is on the barrel, so that I'll know roughly where I want to place the end of the spring. I mean, it eventually finds its place anyway, but helps when you know roughly where you want to be with it. So there we are with the spring in the barrel. Now I'll just put a little bit of grease on the inside of this hole here. And we're ready to put this on. There you go, snapped in place. Now I'm ready to put the rest of the clock back together, but before I do that I'm going to carry out a process which is called pegging out. It's quite important you do so. Use a bit of pegging wood. Some people use toothpicks, but I buy the peg wood. I think it's made out of orange wood. And you basically just going through all the little holes where there's going to be a pivot going through, cleaning them up just to make sure there's no residue of either cleaning fluid or built up grease or oil or anything like that. I mean, in fact, these are coming out really clean. I'm checking my piece of wood for any dark marks. There's nothing on there. Nevertheless, it's something that you should really be doing. You want to try to eliminate as much friction from the clockwork as possible. So everything's got to be super smooth, super clean and super slippery. Right, I opted for these little finger cots instead. I've got tons of these things and I can use the gloves for other things when I need them. So I'll put me clock stands on to begin with. It's a three-legged table. Right, so first one I'll go on will be this wheel. Then Mainspring. Oh, I told you it was a three-legged table. Trouble is I can't move the leg up any further because it's going to be in the way of the mainspring. So, yep, that's in properly. Okay, so I want to go in there. That one will go in there, and that one will go in there. And that's about it. And this will fit on the top like that. Actually would help if I put it the right way round. You could tell I'm a rubbish clockmaker because I keep getting things wrong. So now all that's left for me to do is to make sure all the pivots meet up and go through their corresponding holes. And that weren't too hard. It's a lot easier with this than it is with the striking clocks when you've got double the amount of wheels on there. With that done, I can just push my pins through and that'll hold the mechanism together. That's it. Right, so I can now carry on with building up the back of the clock. Just place that there. Just going to put a tiny little drop of oil there because I can see it's been rubbing on the case for whatever reason, and I know it shouldn't be, but just in case it does it again, tiniest amount of oil on there. Put the pin in to hold the click gear in place. Finally, I need to fit the click spring. So I'll just take the legs off, reverse them, and then we can work on the back of the clock to fit in the escapement. Just before I drop that in, add a little bit of oil to the pivots on this side. So that's the clock work all serviced and now mechanically should be in good working order. So let's give it a wind. And look at that, it works first time. That's just a pleasure to see. I'm really pleased with that. Not that I doubted myself, but it's always nice when you pick up a clock that's not working and you just go through the simple process of giving it a service and then suddenly it's come back to life. Very pleasing. So now that I've got the mechanism working, I can think about the case of the clock, as I said. And looking at it, it's got a few chips in it here and there, and it's some scratches, and it's dirty and ever. And I mean, it's really grimy, and it has got some quite bad scuffs on there. Now, I really want to just strip back the varnish or whatever it is, French polish, I don't know what it is. I just feel that I want to strip it back, clean everything up and smooth out where there are some gouges, and either just give it a straightforward varnish or a varnish with a dye in there. As I say, for me, part of the pleasure in clock repairing is the restoration process and getting it to look like it was new. And I know a lot of people sort of scream at things like that and say, oh, like every scratch tells a story, but it's all very well if you know the story behind that scratch and that gouge and whatever, but when you don't really know the story behind it, it's meaningless. Or it is for me. And I don't restore these things to sell, I just restore them for my own pleasure as a pastime. So I'm going to think about rubbing that down, and I'm probably going to make a start on that today, but it's really cold in my workshop. Right. To begin with, I've sort of just grabbed my homemade scraper and made a start on it, and it's taken the varnish off really well. And the other thing is that it isn't causing a great deal of dust, which means I can do it in my little clock making room rather than going out into the workshop, which is too big to warm up with the heater. So I'll just do this for now, and I can always nip in there when I have to do a bit of sanding to finish it all off. I've spent about an hour on this, scraping it and then sanding it, and it's come out really good. I'm pleased I'm doing it. Done all the back as well. The back still needs a rub down, so for now what I've done is I've just rubbed over this with a 120 and then a what was it, like a 320 on top of that, and got that one quite smooth. And I wanted to have a go at using this. It's Danish oil, Jacobian dark oak. The thing is, what I noticed with this is like you've got different coloured woods, and obviously the original finish just covered all of that, and you couldn't tell that it was all different coloured woods. So I don't know if this is going to have the same effect. But it's actually a really good finish. Yeah, this is coming out better than I expected. The oil is bringing up the grain. Of the wood. Like I said, I'm not sure, but I do think it's mahogany. It's got that sort of reddish hue to it, and then you can't sort of really see it. I'm not sure if you can see it in the camera or not, but you've almost got around this area here where the grain almost has got that holographic effect. It's lovely. You know what, this was a really good idea. I was a bit uncertain of whether I should do it or not, but now that I've seen this, I'm pleased with what I'm going to do. Is really going to make this clock stand out. So I'm going to leave that as it is for tonight. I'll let that dry, then I'll give it a very fine rub over with a 4-0 wire wool and give it another coat, and then a wax on top of that. Right, so next on my list is to put this metal frame back onto the front of the clock. This one had all its screws, thankfully. Right. Now, let me stand that up out of the way. Now that can all go in the case. Work out its orientation. That's the top. Now let's see what screws I can salvage for this. No, that's just spinning, and I may have to use some matchsticks, I think. Yeah. No, none of these are turning, so I've got my pegging wood here, so I'll just use that. What I'm doing with the pegwood is dropping it in the hole, and when it hits the bottom, just lift it up slightly and cut it. So I don't want the pegwood breaking up and showing outside of the screw. although it's never going to be seen, but that's just for my own personal satisfaction. There you go, and that's screwing in a lot nicer now. So next thing is the dial. Now, there's not much I can do with this dial. I'm going to say it is discoloured. Someone's had a go at it there and brought out the metal, and that's annoying me, but I'm just going to have to live with that. There's screws missing for this thing, and I didn't know, I haven't actually got any of the, but these screws here seem to be, for me they feel like they're wrong. They're beveled. Oops. They're beveled. I just don't feel like these are the right screws for this. I think they should have been round head screws. So I've been to B&Q and I couldn't just buy a set of screws. I had to buy whatever this ring and plate thing, which I only wanted the screws. And there's 6 of them, which is however many I need. So this will do the trick. But they're brass as well, which is nice. I feel like there might have been something on the end of that, because you can move it, but you can barely, it's barely protruding out from the front there. Next is this. And what screws have I got for this? Yep, I've got 3 screws for that. That goes there. This is badly rusted. I'm meant to clean this up. I'll leave that off for now. I can do that another time. Alright, so next step is to put the hands on. Okay, and now the minute hand. And I noticed when I had this Glock on test and I put the hands on, the minute hand only fits in one position. So that square that's been cut out matches perfectly. It's a probably misaligned square, and that's a misaligned square shaft on the end of that. If I try to put it there, it doesn't want to go on, and there it won't go on. And I know for a fact, because I just tested it, that it will go on and sit nicely in there. So here's my finished clock. This was a real joy to work on. It was really easy. The mechanical side of it was so basic that anybody could do this. Apart from the escapement, which was a tiny bit fiddly because it's tiny. But all that needed was a clean up, and then it's working perfectly. Other than that, we had the woodwork side of it to do, which once I'd used the little metal card scrapers that I've made, cleaned off the old varnish, and then just re-oiling it with this Danish oil, made it come up looking, to me, better than it was originally. I think the other way was how it was originally, was a bit too glossy for me, and I like this sort of semi-satin sheen. The brass bezel came out looking amazing again. It makes it stand out, and the fact that we've got the old distressed dial, which normally would mess around with my OCD and I'd need to do something about, in this case I actually don't mind it. I think it looks quite nice the way it is, with having a, you know, like the fresh wood and the bright brass, and then this sort of distressed style just kind of gives it a little bit of character. I'm happy with this, the way it's turned out. So that's where it's going to live now for a very long time. And I think I'll go on the auctions and start looking for some more of these because I like them. So leave any comments if you feel that there's anything that I could have done better. I'm always appreciative of any comments, especially from experts unlike myself. And subscribe if you want to, but don't if you don't want to. I'm not chasing for subscribers anyway. And look forward to seeing you on the next video.